Welcome to Daily Chronicles, your journey through time. Every day carries a story, from world-changing events to moments pop culture will never forget. We uncover the triumphs, tragedies, and turning points that shaped our world. This is Daily Chronicles, where every day tells its tale. In December of 1619, 38 Englishmen stepped off a small ship onto the banks of the James River in Virginia, and immediately did something that would echo across centuries. They prayed, they feasted, and they declared that this moment, this fragile, uncertain arrival, would be commemorated every single year as a day of thanksgiving. But here's the twist. This was the first Thanksgiving in what would become the United States. 2 years before the famous Pilgrims of Plymouth ever carved a turkey. And almost nobody talks about it. These settlers came from Berkeley Parish, funded by the London-based Virginia Company, a corporation hungry for profits in the New World. Their mission wasn't glorious. It wasn't heroic. It was economic. Find land, grow tobacco, make money, and hopefully don't die in the process. Yet, on December 4th, 1619, after a brutal 2.5-month voyage on the ship Margaret, these exhausted colonists stood among the towering trees of Virginia and followed the instructions written in their charter. They were to hold a service of thanks for the day of our ship's arrival and repeat it yearly, forever. But nothing lasts forever in early America. The irony is brutal. These men, who had barely survived the Atlantic, were celebrating life in a place where life was cheap. Their tiny settlement, Berkeley 100, sat on land long inhabited by the Powhatan Confederacy, a powerful alliance of indigenous nations led by Chief Opachan Canuf. And tensions were already rising. While the colonists prayed, indigenous families nearby faced encroachment, disease, and the slow creep of foreign settlers onto their ancestral land. Two very different worlds forced onto the same riverbank. For a moment, the scene is peaceful, a quiet gathering, a modest meal. No turkeys, no cranberry sauce, no folklore, just a raw, uncertain attempt to anchor hope into a violent, unpredictable world. But less than 4 years later, in 1622, everything collapsed. Opachan Canuf launched a coordinated attack on English settlements in what the colonists called the Powhatan Uprising. Berkeley 100 was wiped out. Most of the original men who held that first Thanksgiving never lived to see another one. History rarely hands us clean symbols. It gives us contradictions, celebrations held on contested land, gratitude declared in the middle of looming conflict, and traditions built on stories edited for comfort. The 1619 Thanksgiving wasn't a cozy feast between neighbors. It wasn't a holiday wrapped in myth. It was a moment of human frailty, an attempt to create meaning at the edge of survival. And maybe that's why it matters. Because when we peel back the legend and look at the raw beginnings, we see a truth far more compelling than the polished holiday story. Thanksgiving didn't start with harmony. It started with uncertainty, desperation, and a promise whispered into a cold December wind. A promise that history almost forgot. On December 4th, 1980, the loudest band in the world went silent. No farewell tour, no final concert, just a single statement from 4 men who had once ruled rock. We could not continue as we were. But to understand why Led Zeppelin, creators of Stairway to Heaven, owners of the 1970s, chose to kill the band at its peak, we have to go back to a single night. A night when their heartbeat stopped. September 25th, 1980. The Old Mill House, Bray, England. Drummer John Bonham, the engine behind Zeppelin's thunder, had spent the day drinking. Rumored to be 40 shots of vodka, though the true number remains buried under the myth he helped create. He fell asleep and never woke up. The official cause? Pulmonary edema. But for Led Zeppelin, the real cause was simpler. When Bonzo died, the band's chemistry died with him. This wasn't just any drummer. Bonham's power shaped the entire Zeppelin sound. The booming bass drum on When the Levee Breaks, the volcanic fills on Rock and Roll, the impossible swing only he could deliver. Even Jimmy Page, guitar god and founder of the band, admitted that Bonham was the cornerstone of everything. So when he was gone, the music didn't feel like music anymore. It felt like an echo. And the timing couldn't have been worse. Zeppelin was already limping into the new decade. Their 1977 North American tour had ended in chaos, fights, riots, and the tragic death of Robert Plant's young son, Karen. The band retreated. Addiction, grief, and exhaustion gnawed at them. By 1980, Page was struggling with heroin, Plant with depression, and bassist John Paul Jones was quietly considering walking away. The plan for redemption was a comeback tour starting October 1980. Tickets were printing. Venues were booked. They were supposed to remind the world who invented stadium rock. Instead, Bonham died during rehearsals. And so, 2 months later, inside a small London office, Page, Plant, and Jones made a decision. Not as businessmen, not as rock stars, but as friends. Led Zeppelin would end. The press release was only 109 words long, shorter than some of their guitar solos, but it hit the world like a sledgehammer. Fans begged them to replace Bonham. Managers offered millions. Record labels pushed. But Zeppelin wasn't a brand. It was a bond. A volatile, brilliant, irreplaceable alchemy. 4 men, or nothing at all. On December 4th, 1534, the gates of Baghdad opened. Not out of loyalty, not out of fear, but because the most powerful man in the Islamic world had arrived at their doorstep with an army that seemed impossible to defy. This is the story of how Suleiman the Magnificent, ruler of an empire stretching from Hungary to the Arabian Sea, walked into one of history's most coveted cities, and why the moment reshaped the Middle East for centuries. But first, why Baghdad? To answer that, we need to rewind the geopolitical clock. In the early 1500s, the Middle East wasn't just divided. It was bleeding. 2 superpowers, the Sunni Ottoman Empire and the Shia Safavid Empire, were locked in a religious and political rivalry that made the Cold War look polite. And right in the middle of this conflict sat Baghdad, a jewel of the Abbasid Caliphate, a crossroads of trade routes worth millions of aksi each year, a symbol of Islamic scholarship and legitimacy. Whoever owned Baghdad controlled not just land, but narrative. Suleiman understood this better than anyone. By 1533, the Safavid Shah, Tahmasp I, had grown increasingly unpredictable. He raided eastern Anatolia, burned villages, and destabilized trade. Worse, Safavid agents were spreading Shia influence inside Ottoman borders, something Suleiman saw as both a political threat and a cosmic insult. So the Sultan launched a campaign, not a reckless invasion, a precision operation. He commissioned his trusted vizier, Ibrahim Pasha, to lead the first phase. When Ibrahim was assassinated, Suleiman took command himself, transforming the mission into a personal crusade. The march across Mesopotamia was brutal. Heat, disease, and tribal resistance stalked every mile. Yet the Ottoman ranks, estimates say nearly 150,000 soldiers, pushed forward with a machine-like discipline that terrified enemies and awed allies. When they finally reached Baghdad in late 1534, the Safavid governor didn't even attempt a heroic last stand. He abandoned the city. The population, exhausted by Safavid taxes and instability, welcomed the Ottomans as liberators. And just like that, Suleiman walked into Baghdad. But he didn't pillage it. He didn't burn it. He restored it. He renovated the shrine of Abu Hanifa. He revived trade routes. He reinstated Sunni institutions that had been neglected for decades. This wasn't conquest for glory. It was conquest for legacy. Because Suleiman wasn't just seizing land, he was reshaping the religious map of the Middle East, solidifying Ottoman dominance over Iraq for nearly 4 centuries. And here's the irony. Baghdad, a city once devastated by the Mongols, survived another empire's arrival not through destruction, but through strategic restraint. In a world where empires often rise through chaos, Suleiman's occupation stands out for a different reason. Sometimes the most powerful move a conqueror can make is not in how he takes a city, but in what he chooses not to destroy.